Dr. Tom Lewis here. This masterclass video is all about your strategies to reach your healthcare goals in 2020. It's actually a very simple concept. You need to control your insulin. When you control your insulin levels in your blood, what you're really doing is providing enough nutrients so that repair and recovery outstrips wear and tear. That's how you maximize longevity and, most importantly, a healthy longevity. So what's the problem with insulin? Well, it's all derived from eating too many carbs. It increases your blood sugar, and you need more insulin released to get the sugars into your cells. And what happens is you experience hunger, fatigue, store fat, and this becomes a vicious cycle because if this is what you're doing, you're going to perpetuate this cycle of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance leads to any variety of chronic diseases, really prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, but a lot of other chronic diseases extend from insulin resistance. Diabetes is not a disease of blood sugar, it's a disease of insulin resistance. That's the primary disease. Secondarily, obviously, your sugars, your glucose levels will go up. So here's something from Science News. Shielding the brain from too much insulin can prolong life. Well, it's not just the brain. It's every cell, every tissue, every functioning component of your body we need to shield from too much insulin. So the whole concept is to reduce insulin resistance. And what happens today in most of the American and even now westernized diet is that the processed foods deliver fuel too quickly beyond the needs of our cells. So if we look at these green lines as being our energy needs, so this is when we're sleeping and this is when we're full out exercising, this is the energy we need. We're like a diesel engine, we're slow running, we're not hummingbirds. So whenever we bring in a very fast acting food, a processed food, a high fructose corn syrup, beverages, things like that, what we'll see is this spike in blood glucose, and the insulin pretty much follows the same trend. We'll see a spike in the insulin because insulin is trying to control glucose levels to within our energy need domain. So this would be considered a high glycemic food. Generally, we're talking about carbohydrates, but even proteins can produce pretty rapid production of glucose, blood glucose. But this is a high glycemic food where we see a spike in energy beyond our caloric needs, whereas this would be a medium glycemic food, and this would be a low glycemic food. You can see that this food, mainly fats and very low glycemic vegetables, meet our energy demands. And in fact, we may even have more calories under this curve here, yet the absorption meets our energy needs. That's how we create optimal health. The problem with these short-term fuels, fast foods, sugary foods, high carbohydrate, high glycemic foods, is that we see the spike in calories, then this crash following the rise in insulin that actually creates and perpetuates hunger. But there is such thing as a free lunch, and that's what I'm going to be spending most of my time discussing today. So it turns out that most vegetables are concentrated in insoluble fiber, not soluble fiber. Exceptions would be our French fries. Unfortunately, yes, it's true. The French fries aren't working for us in terms of creating a healthy longevity. So let's dive a little more deeply into this. So this is where the free lunch comes into play. Here's your gut, your digestive tract, and your gut lining. Really, when it comes to counting calories, we're only really interested in counting calories that cross the gut and into our bloodstream. That's where the calories really start counting. So a lot of low glycemic foods, we call them high in fiber or high in non-digestible carbohydrates. A lot of the calories associated with these foods don't migrate into our bloodstream. So even though they seem to be caloric, they don't deliver a lot of calories. However, they're high in nutrient density, and you need nutrients for repair and recovery, keeping ahead of wear and tear. So I really consider that we have four classes of foods, four macronutrients, protein being one. And yes, we can have too much in the way of protein. We only need about 3 to 4 ounces a day. Anything more than that is going to be converted to a fuel. Then we have processed food. These are mainly carbohydrates, but their process means they've actually been quasi-digested in the food manufacturing process, so there's not a lot of effort in our bodies to digest the food. So they digest quickly, meaning they throw glucose into our bloodstream very quickly. It's almost like drinking a soda when you're drinking, or a pop, whatever you want to call it, when you're drinking a processed, prepackaged, or fast food. The next, I'm going to call this a separate classification of high fiber vegetables. Yes, these are carbs and these are carbs, but they're very different in how our body handles them and what they do for our body. And the last category would be what I'd call healthy fats. We want to stay away from the soybean oil and processed oil and stay with more natural oils, coconut oils, avocados, olive oil, and importantly, fish oils. So let's look at these 4 categories: healthy fats, proteins, processed foods, and high fiber vegetables. Now, when we look at the pure calorie content, if we were measuring just calories in a bomb calorimeter, a chemistry experiment outside our bodies, we'll pick an arbitrary number. Healthy fats have around 1,000 calories, say for 4 ounces or so. Fairly caloric, whereas proteins, processed foods, and high fiber vegetables have much fewer, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2 the calories, but the way they distribute in our body is very different. Let's look at that. So if we look at the profile, what I mean by the profile is how these foods absorb from the gut through digestion into your bloodstream to provide calories. They're very different. So healthy fats, even though highly caloric, absorb very slowly, so we see this very low profile of absorption, sort of meeting our caloric demands of our body. Proteins, we only need 3 or 4 ounces of protein to rebuild muscle tissue that we're deteriorating, breaking down, and rebuilding. And it turns out that they, in terms of delivering usable calories, not just rebuilding proteins, that they absorb more quickly. Processed foods, same number of calories as proteins, but the absorption profile is much more rapid, and we see this crash down here. We go below our energy needs, and we feel maybe hypoglycemic, or we contribute to insulin resistance, weight gain, things of that nature. Whereas the high fiber vegetables, even though they appear to have 400 calories, same as processed food, proteins, and around 1/4, 1/3, or 1/2 as much as the healthy fats, they deliver a lot fewer calories, matching our energy demands, or even less. And let's go into why that is. So we really need to focus on what is digested. The fats, healthy fats, everything's digested. Protein, yes, we rebuild some tissue, but then we produce glucose, so everything is digested. Processed food, there's not a lot of nutritive value there, so everything's digested. Whereas high fiber vegetables, we may see as low as 200 for high glycemic, or rather low glycemic vegetables, where the higher glycemic vegetables, we may see up to 200 calories digested. So we're not seeing, with these non-digestible carbohydrates in vegetables, not every calorie is going across the gut into our bloodstream. So this is traditionally what our plate looks like. We have some vegetables, hopefully, on our plate. We have some healthy fats, and we have some protein. So what does this really look like? Well, let's just say arbitrarily we get 400 calories from healthy fats, and we get around 132 calories from a protein source. Well, the high fiber vegetables will contribute around 12 calories, especially if we look at the low glycemic high fiber vegetables, picking an arbitrary number somewhat. So the total calories of this meal is around 544 calories. Let's look at a redistribution of our plate. So let's just say we add a lot more vegetables to our plate. We're still getting protein, but now we're getting just the amount of protein, 3 or 4 ounces, that our body needs to rebuild muscle tissue. And we need to get healthy fats for our brain, for our eyes, and for anti-inflammatory properties of the healthy fats. But our brain's relatively small compared to the rest of our body. So maybe 10 to 20% of our plate should be healthy fats, maybe up to 30. The ketogenic diet would be much higher than that, but we probably don't really need that for the kinds of tissue that we're supporting. Proteins can be a much lower number than we're taking in, particularly in America. We really focus on proteins. So what does this look like? Now we've cut the fats down quite a bit, so it's 200 calories. We've cut the proteins down, now it's around 40 calories. And we've increased the vegetables, but because of the high amount of undigestible carbohydrates, we only add 2.5 times the calories from 12 to 28. So let's look at the balance. The plate, you have the same amount of food by weight, roughly speaking. Vegetables have a lot of water in them as well. But your calories are only 268. You've cut your calories in half from 544 to 268. So every meal that goes from this previous profile to this profile, you've essentially cut your calories in half every meal. That's going to help you lose weight, but more importantly, you're providing all the nutrients you need to stay ahead of repair and recovery. So let's look at this. 544 to 266, just by rebalancing your plate. What are the benefits? First of all, when you reduce your protein intake, you have less kidney stress. You're lowering your blood sugar as well, because protein in excess of the 3 to 4 ounces you need will convert to sugars. Healthy fats. We always want to have healthy fats in our meal. We only need so much, though. It lowers inflammation and improves brain function. Profound increase in brain function when you're taking in fish and marine type omega-3 oils, the DHA and the EPA. Low glycemic reduces calorie intake, but maintains nutrients for repair and recovery. But your plate still has the same volume of food, so you feel satisfied from that. So the full plate satisfies expectations for a full meal. And flavors. We tend to be lacking adding flavors. You can make any meal taste good if you know what flavors you like and you add those flavor ingredients to your food. So herbs and spices, very high in nutrient density. Salt. Our brain needs salt. There's the sodium-potassium pump that drives the electrical system in our body. And fat satisfy food cravings because of the slow absorption of the fats and provide a lot of satisfaction with flavor as well. And vegetables often cost less compared to other food groups. So your plate will provide you with the nutrients and the volume and potentially lower your food costs. So let's just look at some low glycemic index foods. The nice thing is low glycemic foods, particularly in the vegetables, there's quite a great variety, whereas when you go to moderate glycemic, which produces more sugar and more absorbable calories, there actually become fewer and fewer choices. So we actually have a lot to choose from if we want to affect this strategy of better repair and recovery, lower calories, weight loss, a full plate of food. So how do we do this? We work on the 4 things that our palate likes. We like sweet. Okay, add a little honey to your food. Okay, but if you're using a lot of vegetables, you're still lowering absorbable calories. Hot and spicy. No calorie hit there, but certainly flavor to spice up your meal. Salty. Don't be afraid of salt. I know there's a stigma about high blood pressure, but get more potassium in your diet, and the sodium and potassium will balance and keep your blood pressure normalized. And then creamy. That's a texture, but fat is also a flavor that many people really enjoy. A lot of fast foods have the salt and have the high fat content, not necessarily good fats, but it satisfies your palate. So texture is the final frontier in food science. So you can make, even this article says, you can even make junk food pleasurable by tweaking texture. So once again, flavor, salty, sweet, creamy, spicy. You can do that to any food. Temperature. I don't like lukewarm coffee. Most don't. So just the temperature of the food as it's served can improve its palatability. And you might tolerate the vegetables, or something like organ meat that a lot of us don't try, and it becomes very desirable. Smell. Herbs and fats give a nice aroma to your food. And texture. Texture tends to be related to fat content. We have creamy versus crunchy, smooth, lumpy, sticky, all these different things. But creaminess, who doesn't like ice cream? Why do we love it? We love the creaminess to it. It's too much sugar, but we can have more fat in our healthy foods and enjoy the texture of the creamy that makes the food more palatable. So what do we want to do in 2020? We want to eat foods low in the glycemic index. We want to eliminate sugars from your diet as much as possible. Or if you're going to have a dessert, have it with a meal so that you're not spiking your glucose, because on an empty stomach, a soda pop is much more detrimental to your insulin and your glucose levels than having that as part of a meal. Eliminate processed foods. Processed foods in terms of absorption are just like sugary foods. Eat fewer proteins and modest but important healthy fats, because fats are fuel for your brain, and focus on nutrient density. So anything without a label or a one ingredient label is going to be a food with higher nutrient density. Sure, there's an organic fad, and I would say vegetables that are organically raised are more nutritious than maybe the commercially farmed vegetables, but a vegetable is still going to be better than any kind of processed food you may be consuming. So my name is Dr. Tom Lewis. That's our masterclass for your strategies to improve your health in 2020. The whole concept is increasing vegetable intake, flavor and spice the food so you're enjoying it, cut down on proteins, maintain good healthy fats, and your repair and recovery is going to exceed your wear and tear to help you live a long and healthy life. Thank you very much.